Driving home, I thought about the most recent mountaintop and how, to my dismay, it turned out to be nothing but another false summit. Another, so close. Perhaps even on the right track, but not yet, buddy. Have you ever been in a spot where you keep thinking you're almost there? A few minutes, hours, maybe days away, just to get pulled back into purgatory, into that valley of despair, and you begin to wonder, was the progress all for naught, or was it not even progress? In those moments, God, it's so easy to point out at the world and project. You're climbing, right? Up and up and up, and you're fighting your mind and body to get there, traversing the seemingly endless spaces, battling the relentless elements. And the whole time there's one thing pulling you through. That mountaintop in the distance. That single peak. You can see it piercing the sky and calling your name. It's where you look when you're in doubt or pain or dealing with turbulence. That'll be me one day, you tell yourself. And then you get there. Like, you actually arrive. And the first thing that you realize that comes to your attention is that this peak isn't the end. Not even close. False summit. Right? Surprise. There's more to go. More pain to endure, more obstacles to navigate. When will this end? When will enough be enough? Which may have even been the literal words I muttered to myself as I drove home. Tired. Just tired. Tired of almost getting there. Tired of almost feeling like enough. Tired of, feeling like I'm a few feet away. Only a few feet, but somehow forever a few feet away. To acquire and nurture a pain tolerance is a gift. I believe that. But any rational mind will at some point look around and realize there are parallel life tracks out there, parallel options, where a seemingly endless beatdown doesn't have to be the way. Any rational mind will pause and go, wait a minute, why am I enduring this? And my fingers gripped the wheel as I peered down Scottsdale Road. I could see a sea of traffic lights kind of disappearing into the distance. It's a single straight road that goes on for miles. And, the lights went on seemingly forever until they disappeared into the shadowy Arizona mountains. Reminded me of a very specific moment. One that I don't think I've actually recalled since it happened. But being younger, grade school, and seeing one of my art teachers create perspective on the chalkboard, making it appear with two lines getting closer and closer to one another as though they were a road disappearing into the distance. It was like, whoa, you can do that simply by starting the lines wide and bringing them closer together into an imaginary horizon or distance? That's amazing. It's just perspective. It's a trick, a feeling of being far away. Just a mirage. Lines are just lines, but position them right and the entire story as perceived by the onlooker changes. Yeah, that's it. The lines are an illusion, dressing up the importance of starting points and ending points. I started to think back to everything I'd ever accomplished, right? Cliff Notes version, obviously, from scoring my first goal in soccer, I think that's as far back as I can remember, to the current day. And I asked myself, what do those moments share, right? The second you arrive at said mountaintop. Well, the instinct is always, once you get there, to reminisce, to think back. When I hiked up Mount Humphreys with some friends a few months ago, and we made it to the top, the first thing we did was gather together and dissect the journey. Man, did you notice how it gets a little harder to breathe once you're near the top of the mountain? Man, Dave did all this with a sprained ankle. Beast. Remember how close he came to falling at that one point near the log? What did I tell you guys? Those fall summits were brutal, weren't they? Tugged at the heartstrings, or crazy how warm it was when we started, and then how the wind cuts through you as you ascend. Eric didn't even have a jacket. It's just interesting that that's our inclination, our instinct. Makes you wonder if, the quote-unquote mountaintop might just be a placeholder. A spot for us to remind ourselves that without the journey, that mountaintop is a car without wheels. And just like the car's entire point is transportation, the mountaintop's entire purpose is to shed light on how special the moments we overlooked, how powerful the obstacles we overcame. They remind us that the journey made us. We can make the lines converge temporarily, but the point is not they're intersecting way out in the make-believe distance. It's the courage, the story, the luxury that is making the trip. I say this not as some rationalization for falling short. That's not who I am. And I hope that's not who you are. We play to be better, to add value, to get the most out of this world that we can as our little planet dances around the sun. It's to remind myself and you that even when life is frustrating, amidst the periods of disappointment, beyond those inevitable swings and misses, despite the mountaintop feeling forever away, the stuff that matters is happening. And it's happening now, in real time, often hidden in plain view. It's there every time you press on. Those moments where you look up and take life in. When the hard things become your reason for growth, you create your own mountaintops. Perhaps the best line to come out of the show The Office. Andy Bernard's character says, "I wish there was a way to know you're in the good old days before you've actually left them." Whether it's a false summit, whether your summit still looks like, those two converging lines way out in the distance, or whether you're standing on it at this very moment, never forget that it's the trail you've blazed. It's who you've become that makes all the difference, that holds all the value. It's the steps you've taken that you will discuss and reminisce on and care about with the ones you love. This is nothing more than a call and a reminder to keep your head up, to keep chipping away day by day, to bring your voice, your message, and your power to the world relentlessly. Find gratitude in the journey. And you will find yourself exactly where you need to be. There is no reward in life without risk. This morning, having that cup of coffee, I was on X, seeing what was going on in the world, and happened to come across an excerpt from, I believe, the Lex Fridman podcast. And one of my favorite authors, Walter Isaacson, was speaking. And I'm going to read you a piece of the quote here, because I think it's nothing short of incredible. He says, "I've had a gentle, sweet career, and I've got to cover really interesting people." Side note, that's what he does. He writes a lot of really good biographies. He did Elon Musk's biography, Steve Jobs' biography, just really, really good author. Back to the quote. He says, "But I've never shot off a rocket that might someday get to Mars. I've never moved us into the era of electric vehicles. I've never stayed up all night on the factory floor. I don't have quite those, either the drives or the addiction to risk." He then goes on, I mean, Elon's addicted to risk. He's addicted to adventure. Me, if I see something that's risky, I spend some time calculating. Okay, upside, downside here. But, and here's the best part of the quote, that's another reason that people like Elon Musk get stuff done and people like me write about the Elon Musks. When I saw that, I couldn't help but pause. Because here's someone I admire greatly. I don't think there's anyone in the world that, takes such complex characters and people and tells their story in such an incredible way. He's built an entire career doing this, and he's reflecting on the difference between documenting life and daring to create it, between writing about the rockets and building them. Now, I'm just going to throw this out there. This is a personal opinion. Sure, he's not sending rockets to Mars. But the courage to start writing and to put yourself out there like that is not nothing. So it's not 0 and 100 here, but I think you get the point. There are people that build, that put all of themselves on the line, and then there are people who view that, who analyze that, and give their opinions on that. And they're very different things. You know, that quote brought me back to a truth I've wrestled with my whole life. It's essentially the difference between safety and risk, between holding on to what you know and betting on what you could be. See, safety's comfortable. It's logical. It lets you sleep at night. It is the warm blanket in the middle of the storm, and for a long time, that was me. It might be you now. Maybe it was you in the past. Right? I thought if I just stayed calculated, if I minimized risk, then success would be inevitable. But here's what I've learned. Avoiding risk does not guarantee safety. But it does guarantee something. You know what that is? Stagnation. It guarantees your story never makes it past the opening chapter. And what that quote emphasized is that at the core of every great story, there must be risk. There's a timeless anecdote that, when I searched for it, is associated with Cortez. I'm not sure how true that is, but regardless, right? The idea in and of itself is powerful. As the story goes, in 1519, he stood at the shores of the New World with, his hundreds of men staring at a vast unknown, and his order was famously, burn the ships. Why? Because that act makes retreat no longer an option. That means the only way forward is through. Because when you eliminate the safety net, you find out what you're truly capable of. You don't accidentally put rockets on Mars. You go all in. That becomes your life. Similarly, Cortez in this story is eliminating all off-ramps. It highlights the principle, progress requires risk, the willingness to step into an unknown. Cortez understood something that Elon Musk understands. Assuming that's actually Cortez's quote, of course. But the idea is, if you want to reshape the world, you have to be willing to put something on the line. Now, I've had those micro moments in my life. I'm sure you have as well. Moments standing at a crossroads where we have to decide, do we stay comfortable or do we put ourselves out there? And every season of life has different variations of this. Right now, for me, it's particular business ventures that contain risk and some fitness changes, some lifestyle changes. Every one of those decisions in and of themselves at the starting block is terrifying. I don't know how it's gonna play out. I don't know if I'm gonna fall flat on my face. But historically, those terrifying decisions are what made me. The risks I took became the bridges to the life I live now. And right now is no exception. It is a bridge to the future, to an evolved self, a better, improved reality. I think back and wonder, imagine if I didn't go, if I didn't jump. And that's the thing we often forget. There's a cost to not taking risks too. The cost of regret, the cost of what if, the cost of living life from the sidelines while others are in the arena. It's not just about what we risk losing if we leap. It's about what we risk never experiencing if we don't. Life is a game of trade-offs. You can minimize risk and be a spectator, or embrace it and step into unlimited opportunity. Risk is the doorway to transformation. It's the teacher that strips away the inessential and forces you to grow. Let's face it, no one remembers the person who stayed comfortable. No one writes books about the guy who stayed where it was safe. We remember the ones who dared, the ones who said, burn the ships, the ones who said, I don't know what's on the other side, but I'll find out. The ones who knew that rockets don't get to Mars by staying in the hangar. So I go back to the quote, and I remind myself this life isn't about documenting what others do or consuming their pictures or videos or behaviors. It's about writing your own story, one risk at a time, one act of courage at a time. And yes, risk is uncomfortable. Absolutely, it's uncertain. But without it, there's no adventure. Without it, there is no change. Like I said, every single time I look back at my journey, every breakthrough came from stepping out of what was safe, from leaping before I was ready, from risking failure for the chance to build something extraordinary. And that is what I want to leave you with today. The next time life gives you the choice between safety and risk or watching and daring, bet on yourself. Take that leap, burn the ships. Because the greatest tragedy isn't failure. It's never finding out who you could have become had you only been willing to risk it all. Are you giving everything you have? And no, I don't mean more than normal or quote unquote a lot. I mean everything. I'm currently reading the founder of Lululemon, Chip Wilson's autobiography, and there's kind of a cool little side story in the book where, he talks about his days of being a swimmer, and one of the races he competed in was the 100-meter backstroke, which is 4 lengths to the pool. And Chip mentions that the general strategy at this time was to conserve energy, right? And then on the final lap, you turn it on, right? You give everything you have, so you finish with that energy, look good at the finish line, and hopefully it's enough to kind of push you past the competition. And before one of his swim meets, his dad calls him up with an idea. He says, Chip, why don't, instead of conserving, you pretend this is only a 25-meter race? 1 lap, and you just go all out like a bat out of hell. You save nothing, 1 sprint, and just see how your body adapts for the rest, right? I think he even jokes, hey, if you start drowning, buddy, I'll jump in and save you. And Chip, who's an admittedly mediocre swimmer at the time, he listened to his dad. And the race starts, he goes out as hard as he possibly can for the first 25. When all is said and done, you fast forward to the end of that race, not only did he win, he'd broken the Canadian record by an insane amount. I think it was like 7 or 8 seconds. Not because the race changed, because his perspective changed. The way he approached the race changed. And you think of all that potential, right? All of that energy was just being wasted. It was kept in reserve to be used at a time that never arrived, right? I mean, literally, the race would end before he could empty that tank out. And even with that sprint, who knows how much more he had left? Could have been more in the tank. And it's like, when he figured that out, how much he was leaving on the table, it was game over. I had a coach in college who would say a similar thing. He was the freshman coach of the rowing team. Great coach and probably one of the funniest people I've ever known. He'd remind us at the starting line, I'll give you the G-rated version, he'd say, "Gentlemen, go out with everything you have. Remember, it's better to go out too hard and empty your tank too early than it is to cross that finish line not having emptied your tank at all." Both of these little anecdotes, right, they paint a picture of the magnitude of human potential. How our default setting is to conserve, to protect, to not go all in. We let so much go to waste. We allow fear to dictate output as it shines a spotlight on a time that never comes, right? Why would you give everything? It's whispering, hey, but what if you're tired in the final 90 seconds? Save some. Hey, don't give everything. Hold back. Just gives us wrong info. And I'm obviously not saying, start an ultra marathon at a sub 5-minute pace. I'm just pointing out the truth that we keep too much in. There's more in us that never gets shown, never gets exposure. The reality is, if we all move that dial just a little further, if we acted like every day was a 25-meter sprint and not a small part of a 200 or 100 or a piece of a marathon, where could we be? See, the body has an incredible ability to adjust and recover. In fact, that's one thing that makes human beings so special. We can adapt. And I know I've recently, with my own workouts, as a 38-year-old man, I'm getting better results now than I've ever gotten before. And part of that's because I'm understanding that if I push myself past the brink, the world does not implode. I just recover. And in fact, I recover well. When you ask yourself for more than you've ever given, your body, what feels like miraculously, it finds a way. You drop yourself into the maze of discomfort, you will find your way out. It's just that we don't often green light that journey. See, this isn't a story about right and wrong. It's a story about more and the option before you, the opportunity before you. What happens when you press that pedal all the way to the floor? Do you know? Have you ever? When was the last time? I'm not asking for anything you can't give. I'm not. But I am asking that you try and find that line between possible and impossible, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at how hard it is to find. Those endpoints, they let you right through. Those fears are revealed to be nothing more than little ropes around the elephant's leg. When one realizes it can pull, when one understands his or her strength, the ropes never stood a chance. They were merely an illusion. So go out of the gate like your life depends on it. Like you trust yourself. Down the line to find a way. Because that's exactly what you will do. Elevated heart rate, sweat dripping down the forehead, lungs on fire. All of it becomes elements of your symphony, your crescendo. Forget what the fear is saying. Forget that your mind is warning you about 4 minutes or 10 minutes or 15 minutes down the road. It's Stop saving the best of you for a time that will never come. It's your time now. If you see past the mirage that is fear and decide that it is. The whole thing was backwards. The cart was before the horse. Now, sometimes that's obvious, right? You don't need to wait until you're strong to go to the gym. The gym is what builds the strength. It's a very easy progression to understand, and we understand it some of the time. Hear me out. He seemed to think that if he only found the right person, he himself would finally be complete. Completely unaware that if he just instead made himself whole, if he worked on himself, the right people would come into his orbit. That is, after all, how it goes. That may be, all in all, my biggest qualm with quote-unquote networking. The best networking you can do is be a capable human being with value to add. Then, get this, instead of having to scour the surface of the earth for like-minded people, they show up in your inbox. It is, all in all, a storyline we have backwards. The right people can't complete you. A complete you brings in the right people. She seemed to think that money had to be made, that success was critical because that success would bring approval and status and power. It would be what slays the demons. And then once successful, she could finally live free. She could be at peace, not bending to the whims and the demands of others. That's why the money was so important. That's why the success was imperative. Not knowing that, it's one's ability to live freely now, before the money comes, without the success and accolades, that the door to all that other stuff is opened. Curiosity, passion, and freedom has prompted more greatness than anything else. And there are some things we can afford to postpone. The freedom to be you and do what's meaningful in the present moment is not one of those things. It's another storyline we have backwards. Don't exist in a cage of your own making so that someday you can live free. Live free now and instead capture the meaning in life. He wanted to be one of the greats. And so, as if a blueprint were placed in his hand, he recreated, he copied, he emulated those who have walked the path before him. He tirelessly chiseled away at his current self to represent someone else, those who had done it. Someone standing on a mountaintop looking down. Seems good on the surface. But what he didn't know is that those who came before him injected their own authenticity into their pursuits. They weren't recreating the same portrait as someone else. Maybe in some cases they were picking up the same tools, the same brush. But they were etching the world as it was experienced through their own eyes. Again, maybe students of the technique and the history, certainly respectful of what previously existed, but understanding that their job was to receive the torch and carry it somewhere new. Another storyline that we have backwards. We think extracting ourselves gets us closer to the formula, but my friend, you are the formula. There's a common theme here. And I can tell you wholeheartedly from experience, this isn't some magical thing I pulled out from under a rock. This is lived experience. This is learned experience. This is me putting my own hand on the stove and going, wow, I have to be careful of that. Your world within is the chisel that defines the external world. It's fun to look back at our predictions. I've certainly done my fair share of swinging and missing, like a weatherman, a political analyst, a sports commentator, fill in the blank. We make educated guesses, and then we see how kindly life is to our hypotheses. And the version of me from 10 years ago, mid-20s, walking along the Cape Cod Canal one morning and deciding that your world within would be the North Star, well, that was one that I hit out of the park. It's been a guiding light, handing me the wisdom that when you take accountability for everything in your life, you then become powerful enough to change your life. Your world starts internally and is projected out, always. You make yourself more capable, and boom, suddenly you are surrounded by those called to your energy. When you focus not on the money or the externalities, but on doing what you love and following your curiosity, you soon end up where few have gone, resulting in, you guessed it, an abundance of those very externalities. When you seek not to be those who inspire you, but instead to water and protect your own strengths, to marry the known path with your new authentic path, you create space in a very crowded room. Trust yourself in that. Trust that if you plant the seed and water it and look after it, it will at some point bear fruit. Understand that no one has all the answers because life is not black and white. You are the only one with your vision, your skill set, your values. That means something. Earn that confidence in your own life. Step into the arena. Unleash the parts of you that have been tucked away for fear of standing out or messing up. The whole thing was backwards. We placed more emphasis on the path than the person walking it. More focus on the water than on the seed. A determined mind can navigate any terrain. That energy should be exhausted putting yourself in the game and committing to a growth process. You are the power. You are the strength. You are the secret weapon. But be honest with yourself. Are you allowing you to thrive? Or are you waiting for the right people, money, and circumstances to pick you up and somehow carry you away? I think life is waiting not for them, but for you to realize it, to own it, and then most importantly, to do something about it. So maybe the whole thing was backwards. Until now. Until this very moment, until you realize the wake doesn't drive the boat. It merely requires a courageous captain. Self-trust. Are you willing to take the wheel? What if the only thing standing between you and your dreams is the belief that you're not good enough? That invisible barrier, imposter syndrome, is sabotaging your success and dimming your light. In this episode, we'll dive into dismantling self-doubt so that you can finally recognize your inherent brilliance. There's a moment we all know too well. You step into a room you've earned the right to be in, a room you've worked, sacrificed, and pushed for, and yet you feel like an intruder in your own life. You move forward anyway, smile, shake hands, nod confidently, but inside you're thinking, what if they find out I don't really belong here? That's imposter syndrome. That quiet, sneaky whisper that shows up right when you're stepping into something new, right when you're leveling up. You get promoted, and instead of celebrating, you worry. You start a new creative project, and instead of excitement, you constantly question whether anyone will care. You walk into that room full of people, and suddenly you feel like the least interesting person, not only in the room, but on the planet. See, imposter syndrome doesn't always scream. Sometimes it's subtle, a sigh before you press upload, hesitation before you speak up, that instinct to shrink right when you need to stand tall. And here's the part no one tells you. It doesn't show up when you're failing, it shows up when you're growing. And I'm going to say that again carefully because I think that distinction is the very heart of the problem. Imposter syndrome doesn't show up when you're failing, it shows up when you're growing. Self-doubt is not proof that you're not ready, it's proof you're evolving. We talk about fear like it's a sign we should turn back. Maybe it's a sign we are exactly where we need to be. Psychologists have said imposter syndrome is wired into us, part of being human. An ancient protection mechanism that whispers, don't stand out, that's dangerous. Don't get rejected, that could hurt you. Stay safe. That internal monologue is not a flaw, it's not a weakness, it's the brain doing what the brain has always done, trying to protect you from the unknown. But here's the truth the brain forgets. Your life does not expand through safety, your life expands through courage, and courage is not the absence of doubt, it's movement in spite of doubt. If self-doubt were a warning sign you didn't belong, well, the world's greatest achievers would never have made it. You think innovators like Elon Musk never doubted their voice? You think Steve Jobs never questioned his vision? You think athletes like Serena Williams never wondered if she could keep winning? The people you admire are not fearless. Understand that. They're simply unwilling to let fear make decisions for them. They heard the same whispers you do. They just decided, I'm building a life too big for fear to fit inside. And there lies the answer. That exact message is what we must adopt. There's a version of you, and it's sitting on the other side of doubt. That version of you speaks with certainty, it walks with conviction, it builds without hesitation. But that version doesn't appear magically, it's created. Rep by rep, step by step, decision by decision, moment by moment. Imposter syndrome says, please don't fail. But the life you want says fail forward because it's the only way you grow. Imposter syndrome says you're not ready. But growth says readiness is a myth. You become ready by trying, by showing up over and over again, by taking the next step even when your voice trembles and your hands shake. Because what if, and really think about this, what if the only thing separating you from the life you want is the courage to believe that you belong in the room you've already walked into? What if the difference between you and the ones you admire is that they kept going when their doubt tried to stop them? See, your adversaries are one in the same. It's just that they found opportunity amidst the obstacles, right? Every transformation begins with a moment of discomfort. Every chapter starts with uncertainty. Every dream demands a price, and that price is stepping into spaces before you feel prepared. That's just the truth. That's the way things go. You never feel ready. So here's your reminder that you don't need permission or unanimous approval. You don't need every voice to cheer you on. You need one voice, yours. So say to yourself, I belong here. Maybe not because you feel it yet, but because you're willing to grow into it. And that's the entire point. Doubt questions who you are. Growth challenges who you can become. Today, choose growth. Walk into those rooms, speak your truth, take the leap, start the thing, claim your space. Not because you have no doubt, but because your purpose is bigger than your fear. And one day when someone looks at you and says, "How did you become so confident?" you'll smile, remember all the moments you doubted yourself, and say, "I didn't wait to feel ready. Instead, I built the person who was."